Faisal, you've talked about this fascinating book of the Seven Seals and what you've learned about it through your experience, particularly in the 70s. And I think it'd be great if you put this down in a recording.
This is a very fascinating story, very interesting story that I witnessed. I was around, and I kept it mostly to myself, except for very few friends. I shared this information or knowledge. This is not an experiential knowledge that I can share and claim and put myself on the line about. This is more about something very fascinating, that's there, and I just wanted to share it. But I need from the listeners to, as much as you can, set aside your reactivity, your religion, your preferences, because it's very, very challenging.
Okay.
And I don't claim to be right about it or wrong. It's a fascinating story. It could open the mind to possibilities, or it could be just a story. For those who are religiously inclined or nationally inclined, like if you are a Jew, this is going to trigger you. If you're a Christian, it might trigger you. If you are Muslim and your Islam is a very, what do they call it? Rigid.
Narrow?
Yeah, narrow. This is going to trigger you. This is a story that involves all those religions and go beyond them. It's not about Islam or Judaism or Christianity. It's about a knowledge that's running through all those religions, all those streams. Okay. And this knowledge is being sealed from humanity. The title says there is a book with 7 seals, I'm going to talk about different pieces, then integrate them.
Okay.
So in the Bible, in the book of Revelation, John the Divine wrote about a vision he saw in which Christ or the Lord appeared to him and showed him the end of days, and God was sitting on the throne surrounded by 24 elders, and there were many billions of souls and billions of souls, gathered in the day of whatever, reckoning or judgment. And in front of God, there was a book, and the book had 7 seals, and God says, would anybody open this book? Nobody dares to open except somebody comes who is the Lamb of God. The Lamb of God, is the sacrificial Lamb of God, which is usually referred to Christ, or you can replace the B with P, it becomes the Lamp of God, or the Spirit of God, which is what Christ is known, at least in Islam, that he was the Logos of God and he was the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God manifested in the womb of Mary and took on a flesh, the form of Jesus. So then, yes. He opens the book, he breaks the seals. Each time he breaks a seal, angels come, blow trumpets, and events take place, And I remember, I think the 5th seal says that when the angel blow the trumpets, then events take place, like earthquakes and disasters happen all over the earth, and a disease come and harvest mostly men. And that happened, I think, around 75, 76, when AIDS came, So supposedly in this book is the revelation of events taking place at the end of time, or, when the second coming comes. The 6th trumpet is when the Antichrist and all the nations supporting the Antichrist surround the Christ camp. Then Christ comes and captures the Antichrist, throw him in the abyss for 1,000 years. And then after that comes the seventh trumpet. And in the seventh trumpet, a city from heaven lands, the holy city, Jerusalem, lands on earth. And this city illuminates the earth with God's light, you know. So the city is not the city that now we have in Jerusalem, in Palestine, and Israel, in those areas. This is the whole earth becomes Jerusalem, holy city. And Jerusalem is, you know, another way of reading it is Darus Salam, Oroshalim, Dar es Salam, Jerusalem, which means house of peace, house of illumination and peace. So the earth now is in a phase of war. It's house of war. And when the seventh trumpet is blown, the holy city land, and Christ is in it, and God is in it, their throne, and it's illuminated with this loving light. So this is why I use this title about what is this book? You know, it's talking about a vision and events, you know. So in 73, I went to Kuwait. You know, I was here in America for almost 8 years, 9 years. Then I went to Kuwait to settle down and to work there, carry the teaching there. I loved the new age therapy, bioenergetics, Reichen, and all of that. I wanted to do it, and I wanted to help, you know, the community there gain more consciousness, more awareness. But at that time, Kuwait was so much involved with materialism. You know, Kuwait, the Kuwait I know was a mud village. I grew up in a mud village. We didn't even have electricity. I used to study in kerosene lamps, you know. And all of a sudden, in the 60s and 70s, Kuwait became like New York City, and greed and materialism and narcissism and vanity. And they were so much taken by Hollywood culture. It's not anymore the golden mud village that I grew up in. So it was so painful for me. I remember from 73 to 75, I was experiencing so much grief, so much pain. And I couldn't come back to America for many reasons. So a friend of mine who was also my student at that time said, why don't we go to Iran, Persia? You know, that was next door. And Persia was famous for having Sufis. You know, I said, yeah, because I was at that time learned about Sufis from my teacher who was a Jew teaching me about Sufis. I mean, it only happened in Berkeley. God bless his soul, Claudio Naranjo. So I opened my heart to that they represent spirituality. So 75, I went to Iran, and I met different Sufis, and they were really remarkable, beautiful people to see where they are and their richness and their wisdom and their love. And I was praying that I knew that the Sufi order has the head of the Sufi order, you know, and the title of the head of the Sufi order is called Qutb. Qutb is like the pillar, you know, like if you have a tent, it has four, you know, and in the middle of it there is a post, and that post is called the Qutb. It's the pillar that's holding the umbrella of blessings and guidance on earth. So he's supposed to be the highest man on earth. And he is usually hidden and not known, and he is usually appointed when he passes. The new Qutb is, by the recommendation of the old Qutb, is you know, appointed, I think, in Turkey. You know, so they have the big events, and you know, so the Qutb is supposed to be very, very, very high. You know, higher than what the Tibetan gurus, Dalai Lama, Karmapa. This is supposed to be higher than all of them. You know,
Oh.
Yeah. According to them, he is the highest man on earth.
Right, of course.
Yes, of course. So we were praying. I was praying to have, you know, maybe if the Qutb is there, because the town I went there was famous for a Sufi community, very powerful. It's called Shiraz in Iran. It's very beautiful, spiritual town. at that time. We had a guide with us, a friend who knew the Sufis, who took us to different teachers, different dervishes. And when I asked him about that, he said, I know of a very high being. I don't know whether he's the Qutb or not. He wouldn't tell us. He said, I will ask him, you know. And this high being was the teacher of this guide who was taking us, the friend of our friend, taking us around. He asked the Qutb said, no, they are young and my presence will be too overwhelming for them. And, you know, I will just pray for them, send them blessings, send them barakah. And, you know, but they don't need to come to see me. So at that, when he told us that, I just started more my prayer, my invocation, my really longing. I was in desperate place. I really needed to, you know, I saw the other dervishes. They were great, wonderful, but my soul was longing for a higher authority to help me, to, you know, get me back in good shape.
Grace.
Yeah, grace, you know. So praying all day, all night. The next day, the guide come and he said, the great teacher, his name is Rahnuma, which means the path. He is the embodiment of the path. The path, the way, said he will meet you. I said, how come? He said, when he said he doesn't want to meet you, he wanted to go to sleep, you know. And so when he put his head on one side to sleep, he heard the voice saying, meet them. You know, so he turned his head to the other way. He said, oh, maybe it's my desire to meet them and I am just tired and listening to that voice. Then the voice came again and said, meet them. So he turned again the other side. He said, oh, maybe it's my, you know, maybe I am feeling their wish, you know, and I'm hearing their voice within me to meet them. Then the third time he heard the voice, meet them. So when he heard that, he said, since it came 3 times, this is an omen I cannot resist. So he invited us to meet him. We went to his house, and the dervishes, the Sufis I met before, they were usually very humble, you know, poor living in very little houses. This one was very opulent. His house was like really a palace, Persian rugs on the walls, silk rugs and eminence and prestige and all of that. And so we had a sit in the living room, and he was sitting in the meeting room, which is another room, and many dignitaries from the city were coming by, and you could tell that they were like ministers or prime ministers, or some people were very high, very evolved, you know, educational, manner, spiritual evolution, and they were full of grace. 15 or so of them went there, and they had like about 3 hours of, while we were sitting in the living room, of recitation, of prayers, of crying, of invocation, you know, and then they left, you know. While I was sitting there with my friend listening to all of that, I felt that as if being in his house, in his presence indirectly, as if I was carrying 2 years of burden, of pain, of suffering, being in Kuwait. My personal grief, merging with the collective grief, I felt all of that being just evaporated from my system. I was shaking like a feather, and the feathers then just dissolved into just radiance and bliss and lightness. So when they left, his disciples left, and we were taken to meet him in person, privacy, it was like seeing him. At that time, I've also seen many high beings like the Dalai Lama, the Karmapa, many gurus, and they were all magnificent. But seeing him, I was awed. I was struck by the immensity. I felt I was sitting in front of a mountain of diamonds. There was no holes, no gaps in that structure. It was really immense, very open. And he was Persian, so he was talking Persian language. And I don't know Persian language, I know Arabic, you know, so he was talking in that. And while he was talking, I can understand every word he was saying. there was such a transparency of mind, you know. Every vision that he talks, he said, and the horse ran. I could see a horse running. His mind was so lucid, so transparent, that it gave my mind transparency and removing the language barrier. Somehow, I really understood. You know, I remember going home, asking my friend and our guide, did he say this? Yes, they were like overwhelmed because, you know, to be in his presence shocked them completely, you know. So they couldn't even remember. So when I asked them, they said, yeah, now we remember. He said all of those things. He told us a variety of things, you know. And one of the things that he said moved me deeply, like did something to me without me knowing why. He said that the Muslims, you know, he's a Muslim, very religious. He said the Muslims have a book, a holy book. Their book is called the Quran, you know, that they believe this book is untouched. From the time of Muhammad till now, nothing is added to it, nothing is modified, changed, dropped, nothing. You know, it's just preserved. But something happened to it. Nothing is added to it, nothing is reduced from it, but nobody knows what happened to it. And he said, I received this knowledge, this realization from the kutub, from the cosmic kutub. You know, so he says, in the hidden realm, there is also cosmic hierarchy. You know, like you have like Christ and the entourage of the saints and the beings and the angels, you know. So let's say that Christ is the cosmic kutub, you know. The Muslim believe the Mahdi, the second coming, or will be the is the kutub of existence. He said, I have connection with him. And he told me something happened to it, but he didn't tell me what. And he told me only when he comes, he will reveal what happened to the Quran. So I was fascinated. For one thing, like I wasn't religious. I was never into the Quran. I love the Quran because I love Arabic language. And the Arabic language is such a beauty language, such a most magnificent, I think, language in existence. It's really magical, you know. And I want to make it clear that I am not trying to advertise for Arabs or Muslims or any of that. I believe this Arabic language is a human language. You know, I don't have the idea of this is a Jew, this is a Muslim, this is Christian. This is to me like, come on, these are your clothes and you are giving me your definition as your robes. You are not your robes. You know, show me your skin. Then I know that you are human. I don't want any of these things. So I'm relating it because of just to take away any prejudice. So this language is fascinating, is magnificent, and ancient, very ancient. God knows since when, you know. So here this kutub telling us this, and I was fascinated by the Quran just as poetry, as linguistic, but not as a religion. I was very religiously defiant. You know, I never prayed the 5 prayers. I never fasted Ramadan, even though it would have been nice if I did. It would have helped my, you know, my soul. So then I went back to Kuwait. I had a friend that I knew. He was my elder, my senior. He was very intelligent man, highly educated, Kuwaiti, you know, who studied in Oxford and Cambridge and, you know, Harvard, and he had a PhD in physics and or engineering, something like, you know, physical engineering or something like that. And he was brilliant. He was 5 in the Enneagram, such a bright mind, knowledgeable mind. And he had a vision of, you know, of things that we didn't have in the Middle East at that time. So I think in the 70s, he came to Kuwait, you know, in the late 68, you know, after finishing his education in Europe, he came to Kuwait. The Sheikh of Kuwait loved him, was like his friend. the one who was ruling Kuwait, the ruler of Kuwait. And he used him as his advisor, In fact, he assigned him to run the oil in Kuwait. So he formulated the oil ministry in Kuwait. So he was the minister of oil. Then this friend that I know, this guy, his name is Muhammad, said to the Sheikh of Kuwait, I am not into this. I'm not into business and into money and all of this. I am a scientist. I want to open something in Kuwait and in the Middle East for the whole Middle East. And so he did, he asked the Sheikh of Kuwait to build him a scientific institute. So he established the Middle East Scientific Institute, Kuwait Scientific Institute, still running, And from the 60s, late 60s, 70s, this brilliant person, in Kuwait, dedicated so much of his time studying the plant, the animals, the insect, the fish, and bringing a new evolution that at that time nobody cared about anything except money and greed and power and prestige and all of that. And he was way ahead of his time, and was a consultant to the royal family and to the Sheikh in Kuwait. I met him, I know him, I knew his family. Our families knew each other. And when after I came from Iran in 75, 76, his cousin came to me. He knew that I was doing therapy. I was dealing with, with people who have issues and things like that. And he said, my cousin Muhammad that has had like a nervous breakdown, and that he really needs help. Would you see him? I said, I'd be happy to, because I honor this man. I am really touched by what he is and all of those things. If he want to meet me, if he want to come to see me, I'll be happy to see him, because since I was his younger and he was high in position, all of that, I thought he might not. The next day he showed up. And, he know me, he talks to me, and he said, Faisal, I know they told you I've gone crazy. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm schizophrenic now. But I have to share this with you, and you tell me. You analyze me if I am schizophrenic or not. So I said, okay. He said, he was, as I said, the head of the scientific institute, and some people lobbied against him in the Sheikh, and they told the Sheikh that this guy is not doing well and he's stealing money. So they managed to kick him out. And when they kicked him out, he had this, what they call this nervous breakdown, So he said, since I left the job, one day I was sitting, and I heard some people talking verses of the Quran, And the verse in the Quran said, we have saved Pharaoh with his body to show him as a sign at the end of times. Okay? The verse in the Quran says, Pharaoh of Moses, Ramses II, was saved by God in his body, with his body, to the end of time. Just around that time, the Ramses mummy started decaying in Egypt. So they took it to France to re-mummify it, to do that, And in the news was Ramses II body has been salvaged through all this time. And my friend Muhammad says, I hear this verse in the Quran mentioning about this phenomena, that Ramses II, who was the Pharaoh of Moses, will be saved with his body. But this body is mummified, and now it showed up. Then he said, but maybe this Quran is not a religious book. Maybe this holy book that the Muslim carrying is a scientific book. Maybe it's a different kind of book than religion. That yes, one part of it is religion, like pray, don't steal, don't do the 10 Commandments, all of those things. But this is only the regulation of the society. But maybe in it there are other things that may be not what we think it is. He was 5 in the Enneagram, brilliant, knowledgeable, seeking knowledge. He started reading the verse, the Quran. He said, as if Satori lit up in his mind, in his being. Light showed up. And he started rereading the verses in the Quran in a way that started to make such a huge difference in meaning from the old way it was recited before. So he started reading me some of the verses in Arabic that if you read them in Arabic, it was so redundant. In fact, it verges on stupidity. And he said, would God write such stupid sentences? You know, it cannot be. So he said, these words were combined and they formulated another words with different meaning. For example, like we read the word history. If we take the word history and we say, we divide the S in 2 S's. We say his story. So history is the story about someone, you know. Or if you read the Bible, Deuteronomy, you know, if you read it and divide, you say, do you true know me? You know, and if you read gospel, you say, go spell, you know. So it's about spelling, learning the logos and the language. So he said many of the words in the Quran, they were not omitted nor added, but they were merged, and the result was confusion of readings. So the reading that we read now could mean something totally not exactly what was intended, you know.
Faisal, just as it relates to the meaning, what you said something about all of the different accents of each letter in the Arabic language. Could you say something about that?
Yes. So first, that was the first fascination, that when I heard it, I got hooked. I love the language, and all of a sudden this book is becoming alive, you know, and fascinating reading and fascinating understanding, and riddle about creation, about that. Even the name of God, which is Al-Haq, means spider web, which means like in the quantum physics now, they are talking about the quantum field. He said, so the word of God is talking about the quantum field.
Indra's web.
Yeah, so all of a sudden, I got fascinated. So I started, you know, if you're crazy, I am joining. We'll both be crazy. And so he started reading and reading. And by time, he had even a much more, another bigger flash of awakening and Satori. What is it? Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, the ancient one, said that the Quran is written on 7 different letters. Read whatever you can read from it. For about 1400 years or 1500 years since the Prophet Muhammad departed, nobody knows what are the 7 letters. What are these? And how is that the Quran is written as in 7 different letters? This is one. The other one, the other verse that was really a puzzle, says in the Quran says, if you take all the oceans and the seas and the rivers of the world, all the water of the world, and turn it into ink, and if you take all the trees and make them pens and write all the words of God, they will not finish. Right? So there are trillion and trillion of words. And then says all the words of God are written in the Quran. Now the Quran has only 400,000 words, not even 1 million, not even 10 million, not even billion, not even, you know. how could all the words of God, that if we take all the oceans, make ink and pens and write forever, you know, we will not consume the words of God, and it exists in the Quran, nobody knows. You know? So Muhammad said this was working on him. You know? Then he had the realization that each letter in Arabic has a form, and you can put marks on it. And there are 7 different marks you can put on each letter. So if you take the letter B, it looks like a boat in Arabic. If you put a dash upon it, it becomes ba. You read it as ba. If you put a dash underneath it, it becomes B. If you put a comma on top of it, it becomes bu. If you put a certain mark, it becomes ibn. Another mark, it becomes ubbun. Another mark, it becomes ibn. Another mark, it becomes ib. So this letter B can be read 7 different ways. And not only that, the letter B is written, the design of it is like a boat, you know, like this. If you put a dot underneath this boat, you can read it as B. If you put the dot in the middle of it, on top of it, it becomes N. If you put 2 dots above it, it becomes T. If you put 3 dots, it becomes Th. If you put 2 dots underneath, it becomes Y. Yeah. So the letter can have 7 different letters with 7 different pronunciation for each letter. So if you take the Quran, now the Quran has all the marks and signs put after Muhammad died. They put marks, and these marks are fixed. It's the same marks. You know, you cannot read the be, bu. You have to read it B. You know, if they put dash underneath it, you have to read it B. If you put bu on top of it, they say this is blasphemy. You can't read it that way. So they jailed the Quran. They imprisoned the Quran. They closed the Quran, you know, by putting only limited dots on every letter. Only one sign, 1 dot or 1 sign, 1 mark on it. And my friend Muhammad said, when the old Muhammad, the ancient Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad had the Quran written, it was written without any signs or without any marks, without any dots. And in fact, that original Quran exists in Turkey, in a museum in Turkey. And I think some of those copies exist in England, in the museum in England. The whole Arabic Quran is written without any dots or any marks, which means if you mark it and dot it, you will reach infinite words from it. So then the Quran will be read on 7 different letters. And that was stunning realization. 1500 years, the Arab carry the book and they don't know what it is. Even though the Prophet told them it can be read 7 different ways, they didn't do. You know, they just jailed it by certain reading. And some of that reading is wonderful, it's applicable, but some of it has crippled the meaning of the original word, you know? Like the meaning of the one word, for example, kill, you know, qatl, it could mean killing, you go and kill somebody, or it could mean ecstatic, passionate love.
That's quite a difference.
Such a huge difference, you know? So it could lead to a whole different misunderstanding. So a great deal of confusion came into the Islamic nation and led to so much misunderstanding, you know, and so much, I don't know, really so many things that are so bad for men and for women, as if the Islam got chained, got crippled, got not liberated. And when Muhammad came, he broke the chains. So here is a book, and each letter can be read 7 different ways. Then he realized that maybe this is the book of the 7 seals. Each letter has 7 different ways of pronunciation, 7 seals. And if we break those seals, from it will come not only trillion, infinite words, but from it might come all the knowledges of a creation. Maybe this is the book that since the beginning of time, it is not an Arabic book. It's written in a language we call Arabic, but Arabic could mean Orbic, global. Maybe humanity at one time were speaking one language. And in the Bible says humanity were speaking one language, and then God broke the Tower of Babylon, and then they started babbling on, speaking in tongues, So maybe at one time there was only one language, the Orbic language, which means there were letters, and these letters were written or invented in such a coded way that in one book, you can put infinite words in such a coded way. If you put the letter B with 7 different ways of, then this is a book like a computer, summarized in it or concise in it, infinite knowledges. So when you start decoding this book, when you start opening it, you might discover in it the knowledge of chemistry. Because if God created chemistry, he must have known what it is, or she must have known what it is, and put it, in a book. So maybe all the equations of chemistry are in that book. And physics, maybe all the theory of physics is about that. Maybe all the quantum physics is written there. And maybe all the languages of the world. Maybe we're all speaking one language differently, not different languages. We speak one language. So his mind began to explode with realization, insight, knowledges, opening the book that believes to be the book of the 7 seals that came for all humanity. That it is not a book came to Muslims or Arabs or Jews, or it is this book came with knowledges that has part of it is religious programming for societies, how to, regulate the society, thou shalt not kill, these things, But that in this book is knowledges beyond imagination. And he started rereading it. And some of his readings, for example, was he was reading the verses, some of the verses in it in English, Like there is a very famous sentence in Arabic, it's always said, and Sufi say it, linguists say it, it says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. So if we read it the way it's written now, it's Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If you change the signs in it, you could read it as Bisim. And instead of Bism, it becomes Bisim. And instead of Allah, you could read it Allah. And instead of Ar-Rahman, you say Ar-Rahman. And instead of Ar-Rahim, you say Ar-Rahim. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim says Bisim, Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, which is classical English, saying that may man, the human, be supported by Allah, all the cosmic laws, to attain the highest aim. So on one hand, in Arabic, it means most compassionate, Allah is the most compassionate. On the other hand, it's invocation for the cosmic laws to help the human continue the attainment. Maybe if it's read in Chinese, it might have another meaning. So we are preserving in our cultures. Our differences are preservation of different knowledges, of different perspective of how the universe is. So each language, each culture sees one part of the elephant in the dark. Each religion sees one part of the elephant in the dark. And in this book is the description of the elephant in the dark, the knowledge of a creation. And that at one time, before this manifestation took place, God created mind. This is now in the religion, the Islam, God created mind as the most magnificent thing there is. And he said to the mind, go, and the mind went. And they said, come, and the mind came. So this mind works like as manifestation and a dissolution, you know, so as if it is the absolute. And then created a mechanism, like if you think that the absolute is like a harpsichord, and then how do you play on the harpsichord to produce sound? Created letters. And each letter vibrate the absolute, producing from it an emanation. So A, let's say, produces brilliancy. And brilliancy has color, has light, has taste, has frequency, you know. And B, let's say, produces golden emanation. And C produces red emanation, you know. So from the absolute, each letter created an emanation, like Don Juan talks about emanation coming from the absolute. Thread, you know, one thread and different threads. And those threads, each thread has a color, texture, density. And if you put those threads together, if you put A plus C plus G, you formulate a word. And the word is nothing but weaving those threads, and those threads become a phenomenon. So if you take the T, letter T, R, E, E, right? T will have this emanation, R will have that emanation, E will have this emanation, E will have this emanation. If you put them together, you have tree. And a tree becomes an object, a phenomenon in the cosmic mind. So all the phenomena in the cosmic mind are nothing but words, 5-dimensional words, time and space and essence. Such a magnificent view, such a magnificent vision that, you know, that the Qutb pointed to, you know, and that the one who is going to open it will be the second coming. My friend passed away 2 years ago. That's why I decided to reveal it, because the Qutb said, don't reveal it, because if I say this, if I said it in Kuwait, they might, I don't know, I might be targeted, you know, by all those, some of those fanatics, you know. But nowadays, even in Arabia now, many high beings are showing up, and they are challenging the paradigm of Islam. They are challenging the Quran, the old way they read it and interpreted it. So there is an awakening happening in the Islamic world, it is. But this is much bigger than the Islamic world. That all the languages are coming, that the mother of all languages is this magical invention. You know? And you can take one branch, make it, you know, make it Chinese, make it English, make it Hebrew, make it whatever. But it is basic sound and letters and formation and deriving meaning and creation. So this knowledge has been in my mind for a long time. I couldn't talk about it because of the absurdity of the theory, because of the challenge of the theory, because of the madness of what it is, and because I was really waiting for the events. I said, if this is so, because my friend was reading it and deriving understanding of what's happening in our time. Why is, for example, this event taking place, and what is happening, and what, you know, that it's all written and coded in the holy books, you know. And he was decoding it, but he was saying that there'll come a time when all humanity will gather around the holy books, especially the 7 seal book, and will open it, and from it will derive the knowledges about all that there is, and also the events that are taking place. That we are now within a cycle, and the cycle is reaching its end. That's why we are now at the apocalypse, the end of time, the end of a cycle for the new cycle to come. The Antichrist, or the ignorance.
What are those events that your friend spoke of?
I mean, some of it was like minor events, like the AIDS spreading, earthquakes, change of governments, politics, even a president coming and changing, and all of that. It's all coded It's all recorded in those books. If you begin to read it, it shows all of those things, events to come. And the biggest event is the showing of the, whether the Christian call him the Christ, or the Muslim call him the Mahdi, the Japanese also have one like that. Somebody who is equivalent to Christ and to the Mahdi or to the Messiah to come, And in fact, there is similar knowledge preserved by the Shinto priest, and this knowledge is called Kototama. And the Kototama talks about the power of letters, that those letters that we have, A, B, C, are gods. I think there are 54 sounds. So there are 54 gods. And the weaving and the interconnection between those gods create creation. That we as human beings are the creators, and we create through speech. But now we are babbling on, we don't know what we are saying. Before we knew what we were saying. We knew what an A is. We knew what a B is, I remember I met a Sufi from Morocco. He said his master said to him that the master knew 3 letters. One of them is enough to generate rain. He knew the power of, let's say, C or J. That he can vibrate it in the absolute and it generates certain phenomena. There is a knowledge hidden from us, the knowledge of the Logos. And so that's what fascinated me about my friend Muhammad's discovery of the Quran, and that the Quran may be the book of the 7 seals, and that the Christ, when he comes, Christ is the Logos of God. He is the Word itself. He is the Spirit itself. And he is the one who is going to decode the book. And he's going to tell us the knowledge of creation and what the Holy Book is, Like, for example, the book Torah, and in Bible. In Arabic, Torah is the same. We say Torah. But the Bible, we say Injil. So Moses had the Torah and Christ has the Injil. But in Islam, we say Christ also had the book, which is the Quran, So he had the Torah, the Bible, the Injil, and the Quran. Now, if we take the word Torah, Torah means the art of camouflaging, of dissolution. Injil means the art of manifestation. So they are not talking about just books, they are talking about powers. So Christ has 12 major powers, resurrecting the dead and walking in the waters, and you name it, And one of them, the art of manifestation and dissolution, and so that's why in Islam they believe that he was not crucified. When they crucify him, he manifested someone, they put in the cross, and he left. He went to Kashmir. So there's knowledges beyond what we know, fascinated with. And I thought before I leave the planet, since I heard of this strange, fascinating language, from 76 till now, this knowledge, I thought I'll put it out. Maybe some people, knowledgeable people, will start looking at, maybe the Quran is the book of 7 seals. Maybe the book of the 7 seals is talking about the same thing. And maybe we as a human being have a heritage that is our humanness. It's not about Muslims and Christian. And these are, I don't know, these are trouble we created.
Identity.
Sorry? Identities, I don't know, whatever, but that there is a knowledge hidden, the knowledge of the Logos, And I've been praying since a long time, may the Lord come, may the one who knows this knowledge come, may I be around, I still pray, I don't have much long time left, but I still pray that this comes and this knowledge will be revealed and there'll be great celebration. The apocalypse will end. Apocalypse is an epoch collapse. It's a collapse of an epoch, of a period of time. This period of time has been 6,000 years now, and the 6,000 years will end, and 1,000 years will begin, and we will all awaken, and we see why we have fallen, and that we have common language and common understanding and common sharing. So this is the most fascinating story I heard, you know. It's hard to explain it unless you dig in the language and you read. Fascinating.
Yeah, it's such a rich story. Thank you for sharing it.
Yes, thanks. Thanks.